Okay, here we go. Hi, this is Mark Hummel. This is Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party, and we're doing a reaction party today. And if you want to like, subscribe, or comment on this video, we would appreciate it. If you want to preserve the blues and the history of the blues, please consider joining us on Patreon.
Today we're going to do War, because we recently had Lee Oskar on the show.
Correct.
And this episode, or particular this clip, is from Soul Train.
All right, Don Cornelius.
Yes, and Soul Train. Let's get into it, and we'll talk about it in a bit. All right, interesting. I think what's interesting to me right away is how they don't. Yep, in the 70s when they did this, these shows would have these bands and they'd play a long song, a long set.
Yeah.
And you see that on that old Midnight Special show. But if you watch Saturday Night Live now, which is really the only show that's doing a live band per se, they do almost a radio version of the songs. Everything's really cut short. I mean, it's not uncommon in those days to have a 6, 7, 8, 10-minute song.
This was the edge of the 60s right here.
It is something else. How this is just so freeform and just allowing. So this was War, and Lee Oskar was a member of War, but I didn't hear a lot of harmonica in that.
Well, I mean, the story on Lee was that Lee was really a part of the horn section. You had Charles Miller, the sax player, and Lee, the harmonica player, basically doing a horn section for the band. But one of the things to keep in mind about War, and by the way, I mean, there's, for people that don't know it, War is still around, but they're called the original Lowriders.
Oh, really?
The band War is really a cover band because only Lonnie Jordan, the keyboard player, is the only original member in the real War, what's called War. Whereas there's 3 members of the original War in the Lowrider band, which is Harold Brown, Howard, the guitar player, and Lee.
Okay, Lee's still playing with them.
Lee's still in the band.
But they are the original Lowriders?
They're the original Lowriders, which is really, I mean, they even did a thing in Rolling Stone where they had the band name versus, the real guys, and they gave it to the Lowriders.
Right.
Because this is really War.
Lowrider was their signature hit.
It was their big hit. They got sued. That's a long story we didn't get into on the podcast, but they got sued out of the name War.
Oh, sort of like
by the manager.
Like Creedence did that whole
by the manager.
By the manager.
Yeah, the manager basically hired Lonnie Jordan out of War and fired the whole band.
So Lee joining this sort of funk outfit as a harmonica player, is that unusual that they would have a harp player in a funk band?
I mean, at the time when I was growing up in Los Angeles, the only guys that I really got to see that were harmonica players, I mean, or that were on the radio constantly were War and Jay Giles. So Magic Dick and Jay Giles Band and Lee Oskar and War were really the guys that, people, when they find out I played harmonica, they'd ask if I knew those guys. And it was kind of the norm. And so, Lee and Magic Dick were kind of my idols in the very beginning. And I went and saw War in about 1970. And they were playing at the Universal Amphitheater, and it was mind-blowing. They're such a great band. And when I hear this, I go back to being on the Blues Cruise the first time in 2004 or something, and hearing these guys on the deck playing this, and I was literally right next to Taj Mahal, and he was dancing up a storm because they were so great.
And these guys, I mean, at that time, there were big funk bands. I mean, Tower of Power was out there.
But these guys were really one of the first jam bands.
Okay.
That's how I look at War. And I mean, seeing them on the boat, it reminded me that they never play the same thing the same way twice. When they play, they do these jams for 10 or 15 minutes that are just basically free form and whatever they decide to throw in there. The really cool thing about Lee with this band, because I mean, I'd done all these, tours with Lee as part of the harmonica blowouts. He was a very different guy on my shows compared to with these guys. He was so loose playing with these guys. My shows, he was always worried about the band and his presentation. With these guys, he just was loose as a goose. And so it was really a joy to watch him when I finally got to see him with the Lowrider band.
Well, cool. Well, that's Lee Oskar playing with War on Soul Train. We'll see you next time.
I had one more thing I should have mentioned, but c'est la vie.
C'est la vie. I'm going to hit stop key, red button.
Boogie!